So the first year I did Rose Bowl, so I found a new old stock store. And I'd heard about the Rose Bowl, but I didn't really know anything about it. I found a new old stock store, actually did very well. And it was I won't bore you with all the details, but something that a lot of other people had known about.
No, we want the details. This is the best stuff.
Okay. So it was outside Sacramento, and everybody there were a handful of dealers in Sacramento, old-time dealers doing longer than I was. There was a Japanese guy. There was another American guy who had been in the game for quite some time in that period. And somehow they knew about this store, and it wasn't very far outside Sacramento, and I didn't. I mean, I was so busy like trying to grind out, making some money, that I wasn't thinking big. And there were guys out looking for old stores. I didn't have the capital at the time.
Yeah. So before you hit this store, your main source of supply was thrifting.
Thrifting.
Okay.
Yeah. And thrifting. Yeah. So
I love that, because I never even have gone back that far with you in our personal talks. And
in California, it was already fairly sophisticated. Sacramento was very close to San Francisco, and not too far from LA, which is.
But where were you living at the time? Were you in Seattle?
Sacramento.
Oh, you were living there. Oh, okay.
I lived in Sacramento. Yeah,
okay.
I grew up in Sacramento, and I was hitting the same thrift store 3 times a day.
Oh wow! And when the new racks would come out, you're always there,
waiting for the rack to roll. That was always the deal. Now, mind you, I mean, so this is 1985, 1986, 1987. So World War II was not that long. It was 40 years ago. Now World War II is how many years ago, right?
Yeah, it's crazy.
And so it was a whole different thing. You could actually find a 1930s or 40s rayon Hawaiian shirt rolling on the rack. Thrift stores then, even the big thrift stores, Goodwill, Salvation Armor, Savers, they would put stuff out that was wrinkled. They would put out stuff that was not quite perfect. My impression now is that thrift stores want to be like Target. They want it to be nice and clean, and they won't put stuff out that's damaged or has signs of use. But in those days, that was not the case. But yeah, that's basically how I did the business. So I worked at night. I was a waiter at night, and I'd run the thrift stores all day. And that's kind of how I did my thing. And that's how I did it until I found the Deadstock store. Once I found the Deadstock store, I invested a few $1,000s and made a lot of money. I actually ended up flying to Japan with a list of stuff I had. In fact, I went to Fake Alpha. Ted Hisada was the owner then. And I left this list with him. And he didn't call me. And I had to stay in some crappy hotel because I didn't know where to stay. I just, and so I left this list. So I went in the next day and I said, "You didn't call me." And he looked at me and said, "I don't think you have this stuff." And I said, Yeah, I do. I had 2-3 pages of all this Deadstock stuff that I had. Deadstock double X's, Deadstock first jackets, Deadstock Longhorn denim shirts. I mean, I had a ton of stuff.
That's awesome. We got to rewind a minute, though. How did you get in the store and nobody else got in?
So here's the deal. And I've told this story many times. So if it seems, like I've said it before, I have. My wife and my best friends, my wife, we weren't married at the time, wanted to go on vacation. I didn't want to go on vacation. I like to work. I was out junking all the time. I had the bug. I wanted to do it. They want to go to vacation to Santa Cruz. So to appease me, like I'm literally sitting in the back seat pouting because we're going on vacation to Santa Cruz.
Where's the thrift stores?
Right, exactly. So they decide, let's take the river roads. Just to appease me, we'll take the river roads. We'll stop at small towns. We'll look at stuff. So we stopped at a small town, hour or 2 outside of Sacramento, along the Sacramento River Road. And this guy actually had some Deadstock red lines, but they were big sizes. I was new enough in the business where I still thought that was quite a score. Turned out they were impossible to sell, but nonetheless, they were. It was red line. I mean, he had the stuff, and I'm about. And I asked him if there were any other stores, and he said, "Well, there's a store over in this next town, and the couple's a very old couple. They still have all their inventory. They shut the store in the '60s because both their children died in a car accident on the River Road at the same time. So they shut the store, but they still have all the same merchandise And once or twice a year, they'll flip the sign around. It says open. People will come in and buy stuff. And then they close for another year or so. So we went and looked at this store. And now, mind you, this is an old dry goods store. So you can't see in there. I'm looking through windows. And as best I can tell, way back against the far wall are some Deadstock slim fits. Not PKs, but slim fits. At the time, those probably worth between 50 and 125, which was a lot of money in the 80s, by the way. Oh, yeah. I could see they were back there, but I couldn't see anything else. I mean, really, you couldn't. And so I poked around the store and just asked people about this place because it wasn't open and there was nobody there. And I ended up getting the name of who owned it, ended up getting their phone number because the people that owned the dry cleaners were cousins, and they kind of explained the emotional lay of the land to these people. So, and this has not always been the case for me, but I was shrewd enough at the moment to think, you know what? I'm not calling them right now. I just don't feel like my mind's right. I'm going to wait. So we went on vacation, came back a week later, through the same town, looked in the window some more, and still didn't call. Went back to Sacramento, then drove back to the town about a week later when I sort of felt like I had my head on straight. Because I thought, at this point, I figured I had one phone call. I had one opportunity to get in. If I said the wrong thing, had the wrong tone of voice, whatever, if they were just not in the right mood, it wasn't going to happen.
Yeah, I know exactly that feeling, Larry. And you get one shot, and there's been times you got to walk lightly. You got to be pushy enough to make it happen, but you don't want to make them never talk to you again. It's really this tricky dance.
Right. It's almost like any transaction, when we do face-to-face business, it's the same thing. You got a $20,000 piece. The deal needs to be done then. You try and get a guy back in the room on a $20,000 piece. It's not the same thing. And that's the same thing with this is, I felt like I had one shot. So a friend of mine, we drove back to the town. I actually didn't have much money on me because I had a shipment of used 501s in London, which they hadn't paid for. And so all my money was already tied up and I didn't have a lot of cash on me. So I'm dialing this number. We're in the town, small town. And I'm dialing the number. And literally my friend and I are talking about what we're going to do for lunch when they say no. Right? Like, well, what do you want to do after they tell us they can't come in? So the woman picks up and I give her the spiel. I said, look, I buy old clothes. I see you guys got stuff. I said, I'd be willing to come in and pay you just to look at stuff if I had to. I'll buy everything if you like. I can pick if you like. I'd just like to see what you had. And literally she said, where are you? And I said, well, I'm in town. She said, I'll meet you there in 10 minutes. And I hung up the phone, and my friend and I looked at each other like, what? Is this really going to happen? So we got into the store, and I got to the Slim Fits, and they had in screw-in light bulbs, and that's how old the store was, just a handful of screw-in light bulbs around. So it was really dim in there and dingy and dusty and dirty, and it was an old dry goods store, so like there were hair nets and, junk like that. And so after I get over the momentary hit of seeing the Slim Fits, I said to her, did you guys ever sell 501s? And she says, yeah. And she goes over to this table, which I hadn't seen, throws back this tarp, this dirty old tarp, and it's stacked high with all Deadstock 501s. And I pick it up because they closed the store in the 60s. There were no single stitches. It was all double X's and big E's. And I don't remember exactly how many pieces. It wasn't like hundreds and hundreds, but there were a lot, certainly around 100 pieces, I recall. And I wasn't quite sure what the fair thing to do was. At some point, I realized that she thought she was taking advantage of me. So I just let her call the prices. And she said how much they were. And I said, yeah, we'll take this whole table. Well, I didn't have the money to pay for it. So what we realized is every time we counted something with this couple, because they were older and they were nervous, is they thought we were short counting. So we had to be very slow and very methodical and very careful and made sure that they were clear about what we were doing and stuff like that. So we realized, my friend and I, that we couldn't leave the store at the same time. If we both left,
you weren't coming back.
More money, she wouldn't let us back in.
So they obviously had original price tags on them.
Original price tags.
Do you remember what the price tags?
I have no idea.
Like even roughly what the prices were? No.
I gotta say they had to be. They were somewhere between $6 and $12 is what I'm gonna guess, because in those days Levi's were retailing contemporary for around $21, $22 for shrink to fit Levi's.
Yeah.
So they were considerably cheaper, but she was charging me what contemporary prices were, is what she wanted for them.
Okay.
And so what happened is that, of course, like any dealer, I'm over it in a minute, like, okay, where's the rest? And so I said the same thing. Did you guys sell jackets? And I kid you not, right next to it is another table with a dirty tarp on it, and she throws it back, and it's stacked high with jackets. Now, they didn't have number 2 jackets. They had some Deadstock first edition jackets and Big E jackets, and then Wrangler and stuff. And it was funny because they didn't have Wrangler jeans. They had Wrangler jackets, had some other Blue Bell products. But essentially, that's how this whole experience went, is it was not only was it sort of a discovery because you're in some place that has, it's like a museum that you can shop at, but there were all these dynamics going on, and we're looking under counters and we're looking behind counters because, as I said, we realized at this point, they'll never let us back in here. And we weren't going to miss a trick. I mean, we had to be careful. We had to be polite, which of course I would have been anyway. But we had to be cognitive of their emotional response, not just the business part of it, but kind of how were they perceiving how we were behaving versus what we thought we were doing. So we couldn't move too quick. It wasn't like we were running around in there, right? Because we didn't want to scare them and make this more uncomfortable than it already was. But that